Welcome to another Human First AI Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Montague from Avenue 9. You can find us at avenue9.com, where we are helping small businesses leverage the power of AI to amplify their marketing in a whole bunch of different ways. Again, more information at Avenue 9. Mark Andrews is the guest this week, and he is from AI Profits. AIprofits.com is the website as well, and they're helping train your workforce. Training and development in AI, which I think is a huge lift right now, Mark, as we all kind of figure it out together. So I appreciate your time and you coming on the show to talk about what you have going on and what you've learned for upskilling employees. I noticed on your LinkedIn profile that you also put Human First AI. So you should probably start there. What does that mean to you?
Well, thanks for having me on the show, Mike. I'm excited to be here. And, it probably isn't too unsimilar from how you perceive Human First AI marketing. Human First AI, I think, is a theory that utilizes AI as a tool and allows us humans to kind of find opportunities to use that tool to improve our lives. So my core focus is really trying to identify opportunities to help people find X amount of hours back per week, and then kind of helping them unlock this opportunity cost for themselves. And, AI means a range of different things to a range of different people, but I really think it's how we approach it individually that matters most.
Well, I want to start with you there because I think sometimes on the show we go really deep and nerd out. But I think when you're talking about training or introducing people to AI, it's a conversation we haven't had before. And you use the word AI literacy, which is kind of understanding it. And I noticed that you kind of picked three buckets. I have 4 or 5 buckets of AI, but I think there's like the data science part, there's like the generative AI part, and then there's the automation part that you had on your website. How is that how you recommend starting to talk about it with people, or should we wind it back even further? If we talk about AI literacy, where should we start with our employees that maybe are not hip with it?
It's a really good question. And I think at this point in time, we're seeing different stages of organizations at different stages of this literacy curve, if you will. Some have, essentially rolled out a lot of licenses, rolled out self-training videos, have kind of given some resources. And in a lot of those cases, what you can actually observe is how many people are actually using these tools week to week, day to day, and to what level is that utility. So when you see other literacy approaches, some of them are very foundational. Some of them are very much so focused on the innards of an LLM and how they operate. Others actually talk about the future of how AI might impact our industries, what things might look like in 10 or 15 years. And my approach to AI is really trying to find use cases and problems to solve with AI that are relevant to your business. So it's actually funny because sometimes when I'm going through my process, AI isn't actually the first answer. It's more so like a data strategy opportunity, or more so an alignment opportunity into which AI may or may not take a place. So I think it's really trying to solve a problem with that AI first mindset, but being cognizant of its limits, if you will.
Yeah, I think that's cool. And you bring up another good point, which is I think, CEOs and leaders want to know where's it going, what's going to happen in the next 3 years, 30 years, what does it look like? I think a lot of people just want to know, how can it help me save time in my job, right? If I'm a frontline employee. But there is this middle ground of literacy of I should kind of know how these tools work in order to get the best out of them, right? That we need to know how the AI thinks in order to use it as a strategic partner. Is that fair?
I agree. And I think it really comes down to the specific remits and environments into which we are working, right? Because if we look at AI and we look at that foundation of data science, the ability to take integers, to take data, and to make logical decisions from it isn't too far off of what we've seen AI in the past. So those are kind of the low-hanging fruits. When we're asking it to look at integer level data and then mix it with textual data and to try to reason and decipher how this data might mean in terms of X or Y, that's when things start to get a little bit limited. So I think really by using it as a tool and learning around those restrictions, to your point, you can kind of figure out all right, how should I be thinking about this moving forward? And how should I be integrating this in my life? And a lot of the times I use this analogy of AI is a chainsaw. If you have an acre of trees to chop down and you're using an axe, that might take you a month. With AI, it might take you 2 weeks. But if you don't know how to use that chainsaw, you don't know the angles, and you're not practicing based on repetition, it's going to take you longer. Now, if you look at someone who's been using a chainsaw for a year and a half now, oh, they're already chopping down 3 acres in that time because they've kind of internalized it and seen that opportunity to use it as a tool.
I love that. And to continue the analogy, it kind of takes us into the automation part, which is, I guess my question is, where do you think we are today, or where most businesses are? Is that you can also now begin to start training robots to use the chainsaw for you, which I think is a scary proposition for a lot of people. But when you think about, actually automating and running tests for things, where do we sit in the middle of 2025 here? Is that a reality, or is people still chopping down the forest themselves?
It's a difficult answer, because for a very, very small few, they're starting to think about it, building that into the business and starting to attach it into certain sequences of operations. When I found your site of what you were doing, Mike, I really admired your background, because you had seen this opportunity well before a lot of different folks did. And when then I launched my business 2 months ago, I had actually anticipated more of those discussions would be in those agentic kind of problem solution formats and more of those kind of automation flows. But what I've actually realized is people are still really learning how to use AI day to day. And whether you're looking at that 2025 McKinsey report that says 12% of workers are using it, or that Mary Meeker report that says 40% of people are using it, that's still a huge gap of saying the majority of people aren't using it. So it's changes on perspective.
Using it and using it well are two different questions, right? I was a part of a thing for the Alexa voice app. We were training it to do some different like sales training and prompting and stuff. And this, I feel like, was the very rudimentary thing. But people pitching in that space were saying like, 8 billion people a day are using voice prompts. Well, they're saying like, play this song for me, or, what's the weather outside? They're not using voice activation in day to day with very good intelligent prompts or outcomes. And I kind of feel that that's where we are with AI right now too, is that people might be asking it to write an email or a specific thing, or, a book report their boss asked for or something. But it's not that they're very sophisticated about the questions and prompts that they're asking. So I tend to be with you. Let's start there and dive into it. What is sort of the best way to use it if you're a frontline worker right now? And can you talk a little bit about maybe the prompt frameworks or things that you teach people, of just basic skills that everybody should know in 2025?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think my approach is pretty prescriptive, and it's focused on productivity over a time period. So what I'll really try to do is sit down and diagnose certain synergies that consume a large amount of time across a macro group of people. So let's say, for instance, 100 people are bound to this one system or operation, say 6 to 8 hours a week. What I'll actually do there is peel back the layers and understand that sequence of flow and kind of act as a data psychiatrist and learn the logic of why and how they're doing certain things that they do. Because that aspect of human storytelling in the nooks and crannies of data are incredibly important, right? So I think it's like kind of unearthing that, how do we give you this data tool that's most relevant and practical for your day to day? And then how does that ultimately route up to the greater picture of your team's goals, your operation, and then ultimately the business? Because it's very much like a cat or mouse type of conversation at the beginning until you really learn like what they're doing and how they're doing it.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned data, because my mind kind of goes more towards the prompts, like what kind of questions, but they do all work together, right? I think if you're really thinking about how to get the most out of AI, it's how do you give it the correct context and the correct data and enable to answer your questions, right? But then you have to also answer the right question. And then you also still have to have the strategy of knowing where to go. Like if you're not asking a question to get an answer that's worthwhile or save you time or money or effort, then it's all kind of pointless too. Do you have any other ways of thinking about that?
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of times, like when I work with teams, it's understanding the access they have. Like, do you guys have access to your gold mine of internal data? Because then that actually changes the approach of prompting. because then they can kind of prioritize that subset as a primary source, and then they can flitter on additional secondary or third sources to that data. But when we think about it in like a marketing perspective, what I love to do is like break it down front to end. So say you go from like content creation or even campaign ideation to content creation, to the messaging, to the creative, to the QAing, to the actual campaign launch, to the pulling of the data, the analytics, and then kind of the final assessment. While marketing could be segmented across those roles, it's really like hyper focused on each one of those and how AI can help refine or improve that part of the process. And then as you kind of take a step back, you're kind of aligning teams with certain tools that can work kind of cooperatively in like a regular sandbox. And that's really where the magic happens. Because you're kind of personalizing that perspective of AI across the team, but relevancy in terms of each person.
And where are you getting the best results? Where with AI right now are you seeing the most magic happen with your clients?
It's very interesting, and I say this like knee-jerkingly, but like the low-hanging fruit of AI productivity, right? We can all save like 2 or 3 hours a week. Emails, meetings, distilling information, summarizing information, catching up on things, right? That's like the low-hanging fruit. When teams are bound to weekly processes for reporting or weekly processes for manual data iteration, that's when a lot of that productivity happens. And you'll see some managers or some analysts working on weekly reporting, and that could take 8 hours a week. So when you actually cut that down to 4, you're then enabling them to focus that on analytics, which is essentially like changing the trajectory of employees and how they can influence growth. So it's a difficult question to answer, but as you kind of work through it, you start to see these synergies, and it's kind of like, hey, here's the low-hanging fruit that everyone can bite into, but here's the more specific operational sequence-related, systems-related use cases that are more specific to certain operations.
Yeah, so let me ask you the opposite question. As somebody that works in AI and with a lot of companies or large companies, what worries you about where we're heading with AI, or where do you think people are making the biggest mistakes that are costing them time and money right now?
I think the biggest mistakes, and I say this sparingly, is hiring gigantic service platforms or organizations to clean and completely reorganize your data. I think that is a trap that a lot of leaders fall into, that in order to find value and drive change at their organization, they need clean, accessible data. And while that does exist for machine learning and using internal data to build out like AI tools or initiatives, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit, as I said earlier, but also use cases that could be brought to life in that bottom-up perspective through generative AI. So it's almost like that top-down approach has more requirements and has a higher failure rate because it needs those clean data as kind of a source to grow. And a lot of the pitfalls I see are, leaders who get really excited about a data plan, hire a giant consulting agency, 6 months in, the plan is delayed, the data is not clean, and then in 2 years' time, there's a new leader at the helm, and it's essentially a pattern of chaos.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And what I've been seeing is the same thing on the tool side. So you kind of mentioned the vendor, hire somebody and go big on that. I've also seen maybe some different strategies, and I'm bouncing back and forth of whether, like, for me as a small business, I love testing the small tools like Whisper AI to just, hit a couple of keys on your keyboard and you can talk to it and it'll transcribe anything. Just saves me hours of typing and carpal tunnel syndrome as somebody who works online all day. And, Grammarly or using different tools like Gamma to create my presentations and stuff. It's easy for me, and I think other small businesses, to pick up these smaller tools and just make a really big impact or try something. And it's $20 a month. If it doesn't work out, I can drop it. But I see larger organizations playing it safe with the bigger programs of, okay, let's just get everybody Copilot, or if we're a Google House, let's just get everybody on Gemini. And then we'll ban all of the other small tools because we don't know what they're doing and where they're sharing their private information and all of the other stuff, and kind of working it from the core function out. Or even like in marketing, are you a HubSpot house or a Salesforce house? Let's use any tool that integrates with Salesforce and Einstein and then kind of ignore everything else. I think they're both viable strategies, but have you seen any others that make sense or have any different thoughts, or do you think one is better than the other?
It's interesting. I see the agility available to small businesses is far greater, right? Because there's not that overarching IP risk, or there's not this idea that there's going to be first-party data or private data that might be leaked out to the greater sources. So to your point, Gamma is a tool that for some of my enterprise clients would be the most tremendous time save they could ever imagine. But they're stuck with the janky Copilot for PowerPoint, which, is not quite good at anything, I could say.
Not even the same thing. Not even the same.
Yeah,
product, really. I do want to interrupt there, and I don't want to. So save your train of thought, but I think people are missing also right now that some tools like Gamma is built with AI as like the core functionality of it, and PowerPoint is like got AI plopped on top of it that will kind of let you help write a slide or anything. And I think we're seeing a lot of tools like that in those two buckets of even the big ones like HubSpot and Salesforce that I mentioned. They're adding AI into it versus building a CRM from scratch with the idea that AI exists is a totally different prospect. And I was really excited to see what Google did a couple of weeks ago of like, they're really rebuilding their business model from scratch now that we're in a world with AI. And I think that's really impressive, but also really scary for one of the world's largest companies, right?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? I mean, the shifts that organizations are making for their trajectory are either leaning towards AI or not, right? And even we saw Apple yesterday. It's almost like they released a paper. They're talking a little bit about how AI is still limited in reasoning perspective, which, many of us know, but they're basically trying to downplay LLMs and a lot of those benefits in like an operational efficiency perspective. And, the question is like, do they have anything, or are they just going to buy Anthropic in a year or two and then Band-Aid and essentially be in the game? It's remarkable. That build or buy discussion is so incredibly relevant. And it almost comes down to, and this is a discussion that like is a little bit abstract in nature, but like your specific data strategy for first party data, second party data, third and fourth. Because if you don't have a lot of one or the other, then do you necessarily need to be diving into an on-platform AI tool, or can you kind of use that platform manually with the AI tools you already have?
And what's your current take on it? I mean, do you think, I'm talking mostly to small and medium-sized businesses here. Let's say you're not an enterprise organization. Do you think we're probably not building our own, AI models and stuff, right? We don't have the billions of dollars to do that. But do you think piecing stuff together is better, or to kind of take that outside in strategy? Like, let's just play on what's proven, stick with Copilot and go from there. Which way is kind of more viable?
I think your approach is most viable. I think you need to kind of test and learn and get your hands dirty with everything. I think that you don't necessarily understand how good a tool is until you can see it for yourself, right? And I think that that's something all of us who are working in AI see with our clients. So I do think that that's a big part of it. And I think for that small to medium-sized business owner, I think the question is how much do you want to lean into it while remaining human? Because if you automate everything, you're going to be shooting yourself in the foot. And we've definitely seen that time and time again.
Man, now we're getting into it because I just have like 5 questions to follow up on our last 3. But I think you're right there. I will say it probably depends on what industry you're in, right? You service several different industries too, where if your industry is going to be disrupted, if you're a copywriter or something, or even script writers and stuff, like, you got to know, like, this is coming for you and it's coming fast, and your industry and world is changing dramatically. I think marketers, same thing, right? But if you're a local plumbing company or something, maybe you're just automating a few, repetitive tasks, or you're scheduling and dispatch, office and not really doing a whole lot of the plumbing tasks. Maybe you're asking AI for tips, or you're going to get some cool video tools, and it'll change. But I don't see robots coming out to houses and fixing the toilet anytime soon, right? No. I think those are different opportunities, so it gives you a different risk level. But I think if you're going to get disrupted, you might as well disrupt yourself. And like you said, there is a lot of hype out there, and some things don't exist yet, but we know that they will. They're in the imminent future. Like now they are possible. They're just not ready yet. And so I think you got to put problems and solutions in different buckets and think about them differently. Do you have any way that you think about it, or maybe why you decided to jump and disrupt your life and career and start this business?
Yeah, it was interesting because, and I think this kind of answers a lot of the question, is I had, when I was working in marketing, I worked in marketing for 10 years. And back in 2021, I went back to school, got a degree in data science, and pivoted to product tech and, product tech owner role. And I had this just epiphany that LLMs over time have become a tool that is so valuable to everyone in their own respective way that they can't simply comprehend what it can do yet, right? And I had like this epiphany that like, hey, I was signing checks working with giant consulting agencies. I've worked with loads of consultants all the way from the data science SME level all the way up to kind of like the lead partner. And I kind of realized like this doesn't have to be the way that large organizations or medium-sized businesses can find ways to use AI. Assuming that they have the internet and unlimited access to YouTube and all the learning resources necessary, what is that gap? And what is the opportunity to actually help people in an accessible way that's not going to cost millions of dollars and take years? So that's really why I developed like this entire approach, is like by learning how powerful it was and by saying, hey, if you give me 10 minutes of your time, I'll save you 10 hours next month.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And that's the promise for sure. I see people again kind of splitting off, and I know that I'm sure you hate it too when people go, I tried AI, it's dumb, or it's not for me, or I'm too old to learn it and stuff. And it's like saying, 40 years ago, the internet's dumb, I'm not going to use the internet, or I'm not going to have a cell phone. You can call me on my landline kind of thing, and it's just like it would be an idiot proposition now, but I see people maybe not understanding the value of AI because they tried to ask it a question that it didn't have the context for, or they want it to fix everything in their day rather than looking for like small specific wins that could make a dramatic impact. Or like you said, some of these tools just suck. And so you try one and you're like, oh, everybody's hyping this napkin thing or something. And if you're a graphic designer, you go, they're really not that great. I can build a better graphic myself, and they move on and they just never look back to reevaluate it. And so I think I would encourage anybody that's made it to this point in the podcast to say, like, you're interested in it. You've gotten this far. Don't stop. Like, you have to keep learning and push through. This is going to be a little bit of a learning curve, and we're all going to struggle together, but the tools keep getting better, and something that it couldn't do last week, it can do this week. And, images, it couldn't make fingers for a while or spaghetti, and the physics were terrible and the text was terrible, but 3 to 6 months later, it's not terrible. It can do that. And so I really think we have to change the way we think about AI and this disruption to our economy, because it's not like anything that's come before. Your thoughts on just, final thoughts on the overall strategy of where you think things are going to be in the next 3 to 10 years, and how business owners, marketers should be thinking about AI?
Yeah, I think it's something that is not going to go away. It's a tool that if you don't figure out how to use it, the people around you and your competitors, if they are using it, are going to be doing things cheaper and faster than you. So I think almost as a tool, that epiphany moment of showcasing how it can add value is so necessary because of the competitiveness of it. And, when we think about the human aspects of AI, right, and we think about just attention, or the attention economy in general, the amount of hours you spend scrolling on your phone, and then to understand that, say, 20% of the people who've been turned away from AI tried it once and didn't like it. Think about the time you actually spend and give it 5 to 10 minutes and have a discussion and give it some real problems you have. Because I think that when you really switch up how you perceive the amount of attention you spend on this thing, you can actually start to realize what problems you could solve with ease.
I think the other big thing people miss, and this would be my last tip, is you can ask AI to show you how to use it. Like, what questions should I be asking you? Or what do I need to know about AI that I don't already know? Or you can ask it to, how do I write a good prompt? And ask it to write the prompts for you, then copy and paste and write that prompt right back into AI. It's kind of amazing. It's one of the first tools that can really answer a lot of questions about the tool itself. Which is fun too. So before I let you go, I got to ask you the fun question, which is, if you project this out, say within our lifetimes, 30 years from now, what do you think the world looks like? What sci-fi movie do you think we end up in?
This is a really good question, and I'm leaning towards Minority Report. I'm leaning towards the assumption that if it hears us and knows our thought process and it knows how we speak, and then it can act as a third eye, I have a feeling that it's going to be predicting a lot of behaviors way before they come. In an advertising perspective, you're never going to be looking for a product again because it'll pop up right in front of your face the very second you need it.
Yeah, I think that's probably my favorite too, as best guess of what it will look like. They already have some precognition things in the work. I think it was in Europe, and I forget what they were predicting now. But you don't need psychic abilities from 3 humans to do that. Now with AI, it turns out that, like, we've been pretty good at marketers for a while of knowing if you buy, certain products in a certain sequence, you're more likely to buy other products going forward. I forget what it was now. It's something with driving, I think, that they could predict, who would be most likely to speed or break the law or end up in a car accident. Most of those results, you go, oh, yeah, that's not very surprising either. It's like teenagers and, people that drink and drive and stuff. You're like, oh, okay, yeah. But how many accidents can be prevented with stuff like that is very interesting. And then should they be preventing things like in Minority Report is another question too. So that'll be fun. And then I think mix that in with a little bit of idiocracy and humans getting lazy because they don't have to do any thinking or working anymore. And I think it's going to be an interesting future.
Yeah.
But Mark, I'm really grateful for the time you've spent with us here and helping us learn. So how can we help you or you help us with AI Profits? And where do you think your business will be in 3 years?
Well, Mike, again, thanks for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. Really where my passion is helping people. And I don't quite know exactly where this heads. But the more people that I can help solve real problems with data and AI, and the more human connections I can make, the better. So if you'd like to learn more about my journey, come reach out, come follow me on LinkedIn, say hello. And I'd be happy to help talk to anyone about AI and find a way that it'll work for you.
Love it. Again, AI literacy training and development courses for your business. Go to AIprofits.com. I'm Mike Montague with Avenue 9 at avenue9.com. And we really help you hone your messages and then amplify them with AI tools and align that into a cool, comprehensive marketing strategy to help small and medium-sized businesses punch above their weight, market like big brands with the power of AI. I think it's a really cool opportunity right now to develop the content and the stories and the messaging and the brand that you always wish you could have done but couldn't afford 2 or 5 years ago. That possibility has changed. So it's time to reevaluate what you're doing with your marketing. Reach out to me at Avenue 9 or, like Mark said, Mark Andrews and Mike Montague on LinkedIn. Until next time, keep going. Have fun with it. We'll talk to you later.